The grand hall of the galactic Concord shimmered with silver lights and glowing crystal arches. Delegates from hundreds of alien civilizations filled the seats, each dressed in traditional robes or suits of their own world. The air was filled with quiet murmurs, curiosity, and silent judgment. Today was a special day. A human was about to give away someone very precious, and everyone had come to witness it. Captain Elias Ward stood tall at the center of the stage. His black uniform was pressed and perfect, decorated with golden lines and the Earth insignia. His face, however, was unreadable. He looked calm, but inside, something heavy sat on his chest. Next to him stood a young alien girl, Princess Alira of the Shallan Empire. She wore a flowing blue dress with silver gems, her white hair braided in long loops. Her bright violet eyes were fixed on the ground. To the galaxy, this was a political reunion. A child of the Shallan Empire had been rescued and raised by humans after her family died in the war. Now, with peace declared, she was to be returned to her people. Simple, clean, a sign of humanity's loyalty and honor. But for Elias, this wasn't just duty, this was heartbreak. For years, Alira had lived with him aboard the starship Hopebringer. He had taught her how to read and speak, how to laugh, how to find stars in the sky and draw pictures in her journal. She called him father since the age of 5. They celebrated Earth holidays together, and she sang old songs in English and Shallan mix. To Elias, she was not a symbol of peace. She was his daughter. As the Shallan royal guards walked slowly toward the stage, the crowd fell silent. Their armor was smooth and white, their expressions cold and proud. Behind them stood the Shallan High Elder, wrapped in silver robes and tall like a walking statue. His eyes scanned Elias with quiet judgment. Elias gently placed a hand on Elias' shoulder. She looked up at him, her lips pressed tight to hide the emotion. He bent slightly and whispered, "It's okay, Starshine. Just breathe." She nodded, but her fingers curled into fists. The Shallan Elder stepped forward and spoke. "Human Captain Elias Ward, we thank you for your care. Now, by the agreement of peace, we ask that you return our daughter to her rightful home." Elias did not respond immediately. He looked down at Alira, then out at the crowd. Thousands of eyes stared back. Cameras recorded. His histories were being written. But all he saw was the trembling girl who used to crawl into his arms after a nightmare. The one who once asked, "Will you still love me when I become someone else?" He took a deep breath. Then he slowly nodded. "I, Captain Elias, Ward of Earth," said, voice steady but heavy, "return Princess Alira to the Shallan Empire, as agreed." He stepped aside. Alira looked up at him again, eyes wide, filled with silent pain. She didn't speak, didn't move. The Shallan Elder reached out a hand. The moment had come. Everyone leaned in, waiting to see how the girl would walk away. But just then, Elias gently pushed a small silver locket into her hand. A quiet gift, her fingers wrapped around it tightly. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, but she took a slow step forward. The crowd exhaled. Ceremony continued, but no one noticed the way Elias turned his face slightly away. It's not out of shame, but to hide the tear that slipped down his cheek. Years before the grand ceremony, before the shining halls and the promises of peace, there was only silence and dust. Captain Elias Ward had walked through the ruins of the Shallan colony with heavy boots and a heavier heart. The war had left nothing. Untouched collapsed towers, scorched soil, and a deep, haunting quiet. His mission was to scan for survivors, but after hours he found none. Just wreckage, ash, and echoes of pain. Then he heard it. A small, sharp cry, like a frightened animal. He turned quickly, weapon ready, but saw nothing. Another cry came closer. It was coming from beneath a broken stairwell. Elias dropped his weapon and rushed forward. Carefully, he pulled away slabs of metal and stone, until he uncovered a tiny shape curled in the shadows. A child, thin, pale, covered in ash. Her violet eyes blinked up at him, wide with fear. She looked no older than 4. Without thinking, Elias reached out his hand, It's okay, I've got you now. The child didn't speak. She only stared, but she didn't run. That was the first day they met. The ship's crew was surprised when Elias brought the alien child aboard. Regulations were clear. All survivors must be returned to their people. But her people were gone. Her family royalty confirmed, dead. There was no one left to claim her, so Elias made a choice. He kept her. He named her Elira, based on a name from an old Earth book. At first, she didn't speak much. She hid behind walls, flinched at loud sounds, and cried in her sleep. Elias would sit beside her at night, reading Earth bedtime stories. He brought her crayons, picture books, and soft blankets. Slowly, her silence turned into soft whispers, then into words, and laughter one day. She pointed at him and asked, "Are you my father?" Elias froze. He wasn't sure what to say. He nodded anyway. "If you want me to be, then yes." She smiled for the first time that day. Years passed. Elira grew up aboard the Hopebringer, the only child on a ship full of hardened soldiers and scientists. But everyone loved her. She painted stars on the walls, baked cookies with the chef bot, and sang strange songs that mixed English and Shalon tongue. She wore old uniforms too big for her, added flower pins to the control panels, and gave each crew member a nickname. Elias taught her everything: how to think for herself, how to be kind, how to fix machines and read books. They celebrated both Earth and Shalon holidays, lighting candles and hanging glowing orbs in the control room. To everyone, she was a symbol of hope, a reason to believe the war hadn't taken everything. But most of all, to Elias, she was home. Late. At night, when the stars passed quietly outside the windows, Elira would sit beside him in the captain's chair, her head resting on his arm. "You're not like the others," she once whispered. "You feel more." Elias smiled. "Maybe. Or maybe I just found something worth feeling for." When word came from the Galactic Concord that the Shalon had reformed their council, everything changed. They sent a message. Elira was to be returned. She was the last royal blood, their lost princess, and she belonged to them. Elira didn't. Understand? Belong? She asked. Elias didn't have an answer. He wanted to fight it. But the law was clear. Peace had rules. Even if it broke his heart, he had to obey. So they prepared. Dresses were chosen. Languages were practiced. Ceremony was planned. And yet, on the day of departure, as Elira packed her small bag, she held up a photo, one of her and Elias, sitting by a campfire on a cold asteroid. "Will they let me keep this?" she asked. Elias knelt beside her, voice low. "They can take you back. But they can never take that." The grand hall was quiet, too quiet. The moment was close. Captain Elias Ward stood still as a statue, his hands by his side, his heart beating loudly inside his chest. Next to him stood Elira, dressed in her royal blue gown, her hair glowing like threads of moonlight under the shining crystals above. She looked every bit like a princess of the Shalon Empire, except her eyes. Her eyes searched the crowd for comfort, for a familiar face. For him, the Shalon delegation stepped forward. Their robes were silver white, smooth like glass, and their faces held no emotion. They walked as if the floor itself belonged to them. The High Elder, leader of their council, was tall and quiet. His voice had not yet been heard, but his presence was heavy. He stopped before Elias and Elira, his hands behind his back. The human guards stood at the edge of the stage, unsure if they should speak, move, or breathe. The galaxy watched the Elder, looked at Elias, then at Elias. "Captain Ward," he said finally, voice cold but respectful. "The child must return to her people. She is Shalon by blood. Her destiny is ours to shape." Elias nodded slightly, though his jaw tightened. Had known this would come. For weeks he had prepared, trained himself to say goodbye. But nothing could prepare his heart. Elira stayed close to him. She didn't move. The Elder continued, "We appreciate your care. Your efforts were ... noted. But now the responsibility lies with us." Illyra finally looked up. Why now? Asked softly. The elder raised an eyebrow, surprised. She spoke. Why didn't you come sooner? She asked again, voice trembling. You knew I was alive. There was a pause. The war. Changed many things, the elder answered, avoiding her eyes. But now peace has returned. You are needed. Elias placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. He leaned close and whispered, It's okay. I'll be right here. She blinked back tears. Her fingers held the small silver locket he had given her earlier, a keepsake, with a photo of the two. Of them, a memory that no one could erase. The elder extended his hand. Illyra took a breath. Her foot moved, just one step forward. The room remained silent. Tension hung like thick smoke. But then, Elias did something unexpected. He knelt down beside her. Carefully, he adjusted a small pin on her dress, the one she had made from old starship wires. It didn't match the royal look, but it was hers. A piece of her life on the Hopebringer, piece of Earth. He whispered, You don't have to forget. Anything, you carry it with you. She nodded slowly, and then she took the elder's hand. The Shallan guards moved forward, surrounding her gently, guiding her away from Elias. Step by step, she walked toward her future. Her head remained high, but her fingers never let go of the locket. Elias stood back, unmoving. As the crowd applauded, he felt nothing but silence inside. The lights flashed, speeches were made. History was written, but all Elias could see was the little girl who once fell asleep in his arms, drawing stars on his old leather journal. The one who called him dad after her first snowball fight. Now she was being taken back to her people, given away like a gift. Everyone believed the ceremony was done. The duty was complete. But deep inside, Elias felt something was not finished. Not yet. He had followed the rules, played his part, handed her over. But no one, not even the proud Shallan, could guess what the human would do next. The applause faded slowly, like waves pulling back from the shore. Delegates began to whisper among themselves, believing the ceremony was over. The Shallan elder stood proudly, one hand resting lightly on Illyra's shoulder. She looked calm on the outside, but her eyes searched the room against, still looking for only one person. Elias hadn't moved. He stood a few feet behind. Hands clenched tight at his sides, as if trying to hold something in. His eyes were fixed on Illyra, but his mind was a storm. He had done what was asked, given her back, followed the law, followed peace. But his heart was screaming. This didn't feel right. He looked around. So many aliens watching. So many smiles that weren't real. So many nods from those who had no idea what had just been taken from him. And then Elias stepped forward at first. No one noticed. One step, then another. His boots echoed across the hall. The sound broke the silence like a drop of rain in a quiet room. The elder turned with a slight frown. Captain Ward? Elias stopped beside Illyra and looked straight at the elder. I'm sorry, he said calmly. But his voice carried through the hall like thunder. But I can't do this. Gasps rose from the crowd. Some delegates stood in surprise. The Shallan guards tensed. The elder's voice turned sharp. You've already agreed. The ceremony is complete. No, Elias said. I said the words because I had no choice. But I can't pretend that this girl is just something to return. She's not a tool. She's not a symbol. She's a person, and she deserves a choice. Illyra's eyes widened. She hadn't expected him to speak again. No one had. The elder narrowed his eyes. She is Shallan. Her path is written in her blood. Elias shook his head. No. Her path should be written by her heart. More whispers filled the air. Cameras zoomed in. Journalists took notes. The Galactic Concord officials began to murmur in panic. This wasn't part of the plan. I raised her, Elias continued. Not because it was an order, not because I wanted something in return, but because no one else did. Because she needed someone, because she was alone. He looked at Illyra, and for a moment, the whole room disappeared. She's my daughter, he said softly. Not by blood, but by love. And if we're really a galaxy of peace, of progress, then shouldn't she be allowed to speak for herself? The elder looked at Elira, who was frozen in place. He didn't answer. Elias turned to the crowd. You all speak of justice and unity. But how is this unity if we force someone to be part of a world she doesn't remember? Shouldn't she be asked what she wants? A silence fell, deep, thick. Then slowly, Elira stepped away from the elder. She walked back to Elias, her face full of emotion. She held his hand, gently, like she had done when she was small, and then she turned to the crowd. Her voice was soft but clear. All my life, I've been told who I am, first by war, then by laws, then by people who didn't come for me until it was safe. She looked at the elder. You say, I am Shallan. But where were you when I cried alone in a dark ship hallway? Where were you when I was sick, or scared, or learning to speak again? She squeezed Elias's hand. He was there. But no one dared to speak. I'm not saying I hate where I came from, she added. But I won't go somewhere just because. It looks right on paper. I want to choose. Deserve that much. The elder's lips pressed tight. You are a child. More than that, she replied. And I am not going anywhere until I decide for myself. The hall was silent. Not a single voice rose. The delegates, who had once clapped proudly, now looked at each other in confusion. Some were angry, some were surprised, and some deep in their hearts felt something they didn't expect. Respect. Eliris. Words echoed across the crystal walls, still hanging in the air like a song no one could forget. The Shallan elder's face was stiff. He was not used to being challenged, especially by a child. You do not understand your importance, he said. Coldly, you are the last royal of our line. Without you, the Shallan Empire cannot move forward. Elira looked at him calmly. Then maybe your empire needs to remember how to listen, not just lead. Beside her, Elias stood quietly. He didn't speak again. He'd already said what he needed to say. Now, this was Elira's moment. The Galactic Concord Tribunal, a council made of representatives from all major species, called for an emergency session. Stage lights dimmed, and voices filled the private chambers behind the hall. Debates began loud, messy, passionate. Some members argued that Elira was still too young to choose. Others said the law must be followed. But slowly, voices from unexpected places began to rise in support of her. The Borans, a race of giant stone-skinned beings, spoke first. We remember when humans helped rescue our lost children from the mines. Not because they had to, but because they felt it was right. Then the sorrel, a graceful water-dwelling species, added, the girl speaks with her own voice. That is rare. That is precious. The council had never heard so many different species agree so quickly. Back in the hall, Elira sat beside Elias on a bench. Her head leaned against his arm, just like it had so many times before. Did I do something wrong? She asked quietly. No, Elias replied, brushing a strand of hair from her face. You did something brave. Brave doesn't always feel good at first. She nodded, but her eyes were tired. She was only 32, young to carry the weight of a planet's expectations. And yet here she was. I'm scared, she whispered. So was I, Elias admitted. When I first held you in my arms, I didn't know how to raise a child, especially one from another world. But we figured it out. Together, Elira smiled a little. You burned the first pancake you made for me. He chuckled softly, said it tasted like the inside of a boot. They both laughed quietly. The memory was warm, sweet, real. It wasn't the kind of moment that made headlines, but it was the kind of moment that defined a family. Hours passed. Finally, the tribunal returned. The head judge, an old alien with glowing blue eyes, stood before the hall. We have reached a decision. Everyone sat up. In light of the girl's clear awareness, the deep bond she shares with her guardian, and the support of multiple member species, we grant Elira the right to choose her own path. Gasps, cheers, shouts of disbelief. But above all freedom, Elira covered her mouth in shock. She looked at Elias, unsure what to say. He placed a hand on hers and whispered, "It's your choice now. I'll support whatever you decide." Her eyes filled with tears. "I want to stay, not just because I'm scared. I want to stay because this is my home. You're my home," he embraced. And for once, the cameras didn't matter. The lights didn't matter. The politics didn't matter. All that mattered was a girl who finally had a voice and a man who gave everything. To make sure she did, the sun from the Concorde's high glass ceiling shone gently on the stage, casting soft light across Elira's face. She stood tall, even though her hands trembled slightly. The hall was once again full, but now it felt different. She was not just a symbol anymore. She was a voice, her own voice. All eyes were on her. The tribunal had given her the right to choose. It was something no one expected, not for someone so young, and not in a matter as important as this. But Elira had shown the galaxy that age was not the only measure of wisdom. Sometimes, experience shaped a heart faster than time ever could. She took a breath. "I am Elia of the Shalon, and of Earth," she began. The crowd remained silent. Listening closely, "I was born to a royal bloodline," she continued, her voice clear. "But I was raised by someone who taught me not how to rule, but how to care. I wasn't raised to lead armies or sit on a throne. I was raised to be human." Shalon delegates looked down, some with shame, others with silent anger. But they didn't interrupt. Elira looked toward the side of the hall, where Elias stood. He didn't wear any medals today, just a simple jacket. The same one he wore when he used to tuck her in at night. His eyes were soft, proud, but filled with emotion. "He never forced me to become something," Elira said. "Someone. He gave me bedtime stories when I couldn't sleep. He carried me through fever when I was sick. He never cared that I wasn't from his world. He only cared that I was loved." She paused, and the silence was thick with feeling. "I am not turning away from the Shalon," she said gently. "They are my blood, but blood is not enough. Home is not just where you are born. Home is where someone waits for you, where someone fights for you, where someone holds your hand when you're afraid." Elias looked away, wiping a tear. "I choose Earth," she said. "I choose freedom. I choose my father." The moment those words left her mouth, the hall erupted not in anger, but in applause. Many delegates stood up. The same people who once doubted her now nodded in deep respect. Somewhere in the middle, the born ambassador whispered, "Now that is what humanity looks like." Even the Shalon elder, though clearly disappointed, gave a small bow. "May your path be your own, Elira," he said. "May it bring peace." She nodded, "Thank you." After the ceremony, she found Elias waiting in the quiet hallway behind the main chamber. He didn't say anything right away. He just opened his arms. She ran to him without a word and hugged him tightly. "I'm proud of you," he whispered, "no matter what you chose." "I know," she replied, "but I think I've always known where I belong." They walked out together, father and daughter, not as part of any grand plan or mission, but simply as two souls who had chosen each other. Outside, the stars shined, the same as always. But for Elira, the galaxy had never felt more hers. Years passed, but the memory of that day, the day Elira chose her own path, was never forgotten. In the heart of the galactic Concorde, a new statue stood. It showed a tall man in a simple captain's jacket, standing beside a young girl with flowing hair and a bright smile. Below the statue, in bold letters, were the words, "Family is not given, it is chosen." Visitors from all across the galaxy came to see it. Children looked up at it with wonder. Some asked who were they, and their parents would smile and tell them the story of Captain Elias Ward and Princess Elira, a story that became more than history. It became a lesson. After the tribunal's decision, Elira officially became the first independent citizen under the new galactic choice, Lonmi, the Elira Act. It gave every orphan child in the galaxy the right to choose their guardians. When they reached an age of understanding, it was a small change in the law, but it changed thousands of lives. Elira continued to live with Elias on Earth for several more years. She attended school, played with human children, grew up learning both her worlds Shalon and Earth, but she never forgot who she was. When she turned 18, she chose a different path, not royalty, not politics. She became a peace ambassador for children displaced by war, traveling to ruined planets, forgotten colonies, and refugee stations. Not as a princess, but as someone who had once been lost and found. She didn't bring armies. She brought stories, music, food, and soft blankets. She brought hope. And always at the end of each speech, she told them about a man who once found her under broken stairs. A man who gave her a name, a life, and a family. Captain Elias didn't just save me, she would say. He made me believe I was worth saving. Elias, now retired, lived in a quiet home near a lake on Earth. He kept a garden, fed the birds, and read books under the sun. But he was never truly alone. Every few months, a familiar ship would land nearby. And Illyra would come running, smiling wide, arms open for a hug that always felt like home. They would drink tea by the water and talk for hours. One day, as they watched the sunset together, Illyra said softly, "You know, everyone still talks about what you did that day." Ilias chuckled. "I didn't do much. I just stood up." "You did more than that," she said, resting her head on his shoulder. "You gave me the courage to do the same." He didn't reply. He just held her hand, warm and strong, like he always had. After Elias passed peacefully in his sleep at the age of 92, a special message was sent across the galaxy. Illyra gave a short speech at his memorial, standing before thousands humans, aliens, diplomats, and children. "He was never famous," she said. "He didn't lead armies or win wars. But he changed my world with love, and that made all the difference." The stars above Earth shined brighter that night. Some say it was just coincidence. Others believe the universe itself bowed its head. Years later, when Illyra became head of the Galactic Children's Trust, she placed one small item on her deska, worn silver locket. Inside it was a faded photo of a man and a little girl sitting by a fire, smiling at the stars. And every time she looked at it, she remembered who she was, not because of her blood, but because of who loved her when no one else did.